Good afternoon and welcome to the Montgomery County Civic Federation Town Hall on state housing legislation, particularly the Starter and Silver Homes Act. We welcome elected officials who are joining us today. We're expecting Senator Sarah Love, Delegates Wolick, Lisa Warman, Joe Vogel, Ryan Spiegel, Jared Solomon, Pam Queen, and others may join as well. Elected officials with time constraints that would like to be recognized to speak should message me or raise their hand, and we'll shift to you as soon as we can. Once Lisa Govani has started her presentation, though, we will not be interrupting it. I also want to welcome members of the public who are here today. Thank you for joining us. You're always welcome at a Civic Federation meeting, and we appreciate you. For those of you who haven't attended a Civic Federation event, please understand that we have strict civility rules. You must disagree without being disagreeable. There is no one here today that drafted this bill or is responsible for it. Elected officials are attending to listen to your concerns and thoughts, and they may offer their own thoughts. Ms. Govani is here to explain the bill and how it differs from current law and rules. I would also like to ask you to please refrain from arguing with other attendees in the chat box. We're going to begin now with Ms. Lisa Govani, who is the Housing, Infrastructure, and Zoning Supervisor for Montgomery Planning's Countywide Planning and Policy Division. She will provide her technical expertise as a senior professional to interpret the bill and provide the planning department position on it. Thank you, Lisa, and you can go ahead now. Do I need to make you a co-host to share your screen?
I think so. I don't see the share button.
Okay. All right.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, there you go.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here on Sunday, the snowy Sunday. Hopefully the snow starts sticking soon. So as Cheryl said, my name is Lisa Govoni. I work primarily on housing policy for the planning department. I've been here a couple of times talking about the growth and infrastructure policy and attainable housing strategies, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about the Starter and Silver Homes Act of 2026 and how it fits into the Montgomery County zoning code. As Cheryl said, I did not draft this bill, so I can't speak to the motivations behind it, but I can speak about how it technically would work in Montgomery County. So the bill, what it really does is it limits how far local zoning may go in restricting small-scale single-family housing in the county. It's something that is called preemption. So the state government is basically preempting local control and dictating certain rules and regulations for the zoning code. The bill is intended to expand the ability to build starter homes and homes suitable for downsizing seniors by preventing local jurisdictions from using zoning standards that effectively prohibit smaller housing. So I'm going to walk through the bill and kind of how it works with Montgomery County zoning. So one of the big changes in this bill that would be a huge change for the zoning code is that it says that local jurisdictions may not require minimum lot sizes larger than 5,000 square feet for single-family homes in qualifying areas. And qualifying areas in this bill is areas with public water and sewer. If you look at the blue box on the right, you can see the minimum lot size in standard method, which is by right development for detached homes in Montgomery County. So basically, this would be a huge change. The smallest lot allowed right now for detached homes in the standard method or by right development is 6,000 square feet. So this would basically say that instead of 6,000 square feet, you could only have 5,000 square feet. The Montgomery County Planning Board did have a recommendation to change the qualifying geography to priority funding areas with public water and sewer. And I'm going to show you a map of what this looks like. So this is how the bill, as originally drafted, looks. All the color parcels on the map are areas of the county that have water and sewer applicability. These would all have to have their minimum lot size changed to 5,000 square feet. So that would be, like I said, a pretty big change. One of the things that I'm not going to tell you how long into my planning profession that it took me to figure this out is that if you add 2 zeros to the end of R60, you get 6,000 square feet. So that would be, which is basically saying that's the minimum lot size. So that would basically create, this would just be a blob of, instead of all of these multicolors, it'd be a one blob of R50, a new zone in Montgomery County. Like I said, the planning board did recommend that this be changed to priority funding areas. And what priority funding areas are, they are something in planning legislation that capitalizes on the state's influence of and development. The priority funding areas in the state are kind of areas that the county have in the state have dictated of where they want growth to go. And it's areas that helps unlock state funding, but it also has a lot to do with us at the planning department and where we have thought we want to grow. And it's, a very thoughtful process, if I may say, of, areas of the county that we feel can support growth in the future. Another part of the bill is that there's no minimum house size requirements. This is not really applicable to Montgomery County. We don't have minimum house size requirements in our zoning code, but other counties in the state do.
120 participants.
There's also limits on setbacks.
Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to eliminate noise and I accidentally muted you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. The law also caps how restrictive local setbacks can
Is
be.
your water?
So in the Starter and Silver Homes Act, front and rear setbacks can't be more than 10 feet. And side setbacks can't be more than 5 feet. Will be a huge change for Montgomery County. I'm just giving you the example of R60, which generally has the most flexible setbacks of the zones. The front setback is 25 and side setback can be 8, but the sum of the side setbacks has to be 18. So if you have 1/8, then the other side has to be 10. So that would be, again, a huge change that would allow larger homes to be built. The planning board has recommended that this section be struck from the bill. County setbacks are largely guided by state mandates, like stormwater management, for example. You need to be able to fit stormwater management into your parcel or your lot, and setbacks can help do that. And this is, these requirements will conflict with such provisions and will apply a one-size-fits-all mandate without on-the-ground considerations for things like utilities and stormwater management. The bill also has limits on lot coverage. So lot coverage requirements may not be imposed on single-family homes or accessory structures. If you look at the blue box on the slide, you can see that in Montgomery County, the zoning code, we generally do have lot coverages by zone. For example, in R60, it's 35%, but I can also tell you that we have something called infill compatibility standards, which was basically written for teardowns. So teardowns, for example, in R60 have lot coverage greater than 30%. This is just one of those, good governance things that where we don't want the lot coverage. We want, have to setbacks and lot coverage that can help fit things like stormwater management and utilities, another part of the good governance. And then another part of the bill is that there's prohibition on design and architectural mandates. Local jurisdictions are prohibited from enforcing architectural style requirements, design standards, or exterior material mandates for covered single-family homes. The Montgomery Planning Board did have comments on that. In Montgomery County, generally, we do have some requirements, design requirements, but they're for a variety of considerations, including health and safety, neighborhood inclusion, and they include community input. And one really good example is that in Montgomery County, for the MPDU program, the affordable housing, we have design rules that they have to blend in with the existing structures, if it was in the townhouse development, That's just to ensure that the affordable housing doesn't draw attention and that it blends in seamlessly with the neighborhood. So they are guided generally by, good governance in Montgomery County. And one part of the bill that's been gaining a lot of attention is that it says that local governments may not prohibit townhouses in areas zoned for single-family residential use. Montgomery County already allows townhouses in single-family zones. This is through something called the optional method of development. So the optional method of development is a zoning procedure that offers more flexibility, density, additional housing types like townhouses or duplexes. But for getting that flexibility, you're exchanging public benefits. So if you want to build townhouses, you're providing public benefits like more affordable housing or green spaces. But it's not a by right use. Townhouses are not allowed by right. In our residential zones, it requires planning staff review and planning board approval. But it is allowed, and we think that we already meet the criteria of this part of the bill. And then there's a section on subdivision rights that owners of improved lots in a single-family zone may subdivide their property into 3 lots, subject to subdivision regulations. And what that means is that if you have a 15,000 square lot, you could fit 3 lots in it. That's generally already allowed in the county, so this would not be the change. There are some rules about subdivision and making sure that you can fit within the setbacks, the lot coverage, and all of those rules, but it's generally allowed. And just a summary, the planning board did support the Starter and Silver Homes Act, but as you've seen, there are quite a few amendments requested. Regarding the minimum lot size language, water and sewer services do not equate to our desired growth areas in the county, which is why we can suggest that the state consider using alternative geographies that are more consistent with longstanding state and county sustainable growth policies, like the priority funding areas with public water and sewer access. We also considered asking for clarification on the scope of preemption. We want to ensure that environmental, safety, and infrastructure-related standards, like our adequate public facility ordinance, they remain intact and that we're able to implement those policies. We also think that master planning is really important, and we want to preserve local authority to manage growth that's in a manner consistent with our adopted master plans. And like I mentioned earlier, the planning board recommends to allow for reasonable design and development standards that ensure compatibility and quality in our neighborhoods. And then finally, we also recommend and ask that the state allow for reasonable implementation timelines. As some of you may know, with the election upcoming, there's generally a zoning moratorium where they can't act on zoning matters late in the year until the new council is seated. And we don't think that if this should pass, that we would have enough time to change our zoning code, given the breadth and the amount of changes that we would need it. So we ask for more time in order to implement these changes should they pass. And I think that's it. I'm sure there's a ton of questions, so I'll stop here and turn it back to you, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. Several people have asked to have your slides to use in their own communities. Is that okay? Can you email them to me and we'll share it?
Of course, I'll be happy to.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to ask one question. In the meanwhile, you can all put your hands up, your electronic hands. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you go down to that little heart at the bottom that says react, and you'll click on that, and you'll see a thing that says raise your hand. Lisa, the water and sewer areas, does that apply lot by lot or to an entire jurisdiction? Like I know Potomac's kind of mixed in what they have.
Sure. So the water and sewer, so I'm not an expert in water and sewer, to be honest. What we use WSSC's water and sewer plan, and we looked at it through GIS, and I think it's based on areas, and I'm happy to send that to the water and sewer plan, the WSSC water and sewer plan that we use. We mapped it out for if it has existing water and sewer, or if it's planned to have water and sewer within 2 years.
Right. Oh, within 2 years. Okay. I didn't know if they mark off a whole area or lots.
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember right now, but I can look into that and see,
Okay,
remember. Pull
okay,
up in GIS.
okay. Looks like Justin has his hand up first. Go ahead, Justin.
Hi, can I ask what's the value of the setback requirements instead of simply requiring adequate stormwater and utility management? Why do they phrase that as setbacks, and what under this new law would stop adequate management from still being required, just not under a setback requirement?
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
You said the reason that setbacks are important is because it allows for proper stormwater and utility management. But I'm wondering, is there a reason why that has to be done via setback instead of being done via simply directly regulating stormwater and utilities?
I think that generally in Montgomery County, and again, one of the things about this bill is it applies to the entire state. So I can only speak for Montgomery County. It's like our setbacks are the way that we have them the way they are is we looked at how stormwater management could fit. The other part is that you need, stormwater management is getting better. So it's something that we can certainly look at, but we feel that in Montgomery County, we've had so many issues recently with stormwater management and making sure that, it fits on the lot, that that's really just a really important provision to keep.
Norman Rosenthal, go ahead. You're muted, Norman. Can unmute yourself?
Can that be heard now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa, for that presentation. I guess just firstly, a big picture issue. My understanding is that this is a state mandate that's coming down, and are we responding as Montgomery County in terms of its impact on us and the things that we think are going to cause problems for us? Is that really the nature of this transaction that's going on right now?
First, I want to be clear that the comments that I have are from the Montgomery County Planning Board and Montgomery County itself, Montgomery County Council and the executive. They may have different comments. So I can only speak for the planning board. What we did is we did, a lot of mapping and a lot of analysis on how this law would impact the county in terms of, lot size, setbacks, and its impact. And we did try to flag things that we felt would be issues for us in terms of implementation. The planning board really they didn't focus a lot on the preemption question, whether preemption is good or bad, but instead of looking at this as from a policy angle of how would this policy work and what are the potential issues that would arise from it.
Thank you. So I guess are the interests and the designs of the planning board not 100% aligned with the interests of the citizens of the county? I mean, could it be that you think A and we think B, and we would need to sort of figure that out together with one another? Is that correct?
Surely. I mean, the planning board is, 5 appointed individuals that have their own opinions and desires. And, we are staff and we presented them. But I would tell you that, we as staff, we talked a lot about this bill with the planning board. We didn't, always align, but I felt like the planning board was coming from it, trying to find the issues, the tension points. But certainly I can't say that, it's aligned with every citizen's viewpoint.
Okay, and finally, in terms of setbacks, besides the water management aspect, which appears to be a very real issue, I mean, isn't it an aesthetic issue as well, where you shouldn't have one house come 6 feet from the curb and another one 20 feet and so on and so forth? Isn't there some sort of aesthetic, like when we smile, we want our teeth to be in alignment? Isn't that the same with setbacks?
Certainly, I mean, they're aesthetic to some people. I can't say that, everyone feels the same about setbacks. There are a lot of people that, think that setbacks hinder development, but there are certainly a lot of people that prescribe to your viewpoint.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Just as a point of information, this part of the Civic Fed's position was that the setbacks also preserve green space and environmental quality and saves trees. MJ Langellen, you're next.
Hi, thank you very much for Cheryl for hosting this. And Ms. Gobani, thank you. It's nice to see you again. Couple questions for you. I see nothing in the statewide regulations that would provide for off-street parking. There's no requirement for that. Is that correct?
I did not see that. You're correct.
Okay. Second, I don't see anything in here that requires developers or investors to build affordable housing. What we do not need in Montgomery County is more million-dollar condos. We have plenty of those. There's a glut. What we need is affordable housing, and I don't see where this bill addresses affordable housing at all. Is that correct?
Well, Montgomery County has its own requirements for affordable housing, but you are correct that the state does not have it, but we would still have rules for moderate price dwelling units. And
Yes.
should
Thank
we-
you for what you're doing as a county. I wish you would do more affordable housing because building more million-dollar condos does nothing for the other half of the market, which is where the need is. Thank you again.
Paula Bienenfeld.
Thanks. Thank you, Cheryl and CivFed, for putting this on. Thanks, Lisa. I'm Paula Bienenfeld. I actually want to let people know I'm running for county
We don't
council.
do electioning here on the Civic
Okay.
Fed. You know that it's against the bylaws.
Oh, I didn't realize it was against the bylaws.
It
But
is.
I'll go in off something that you had said, Cheryl. When you change these setbacks and pretty much kind of get rid of them, what about our tree canopy that we're always fighting to increase? The environmental regulations, which we in the county are always pushing to have more of, all that green space is going to go away obviously in certain areas of the county and not others. And the way that the green space acts as a sponge when it rains quite a bit as we face, a changing climate and changes in, rain and rain events. I just don't see. I mean, frankly, this is really even worse than I thought it was going to be. I mean, we need more green space, and we need green spaces in the cities and the subdivisions and in the suburbs, and this seems to be getting rid of them, all our green spaces. Thank you. I don't know if you want to answer, Lisa, or what's your sense of that?
I think, the planning board asked for the setbacks section to be struck. I think that we think that setbacks are important for a variety of reasons. And I think that, preserving green spaces is one of the reasons.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Joe Harkins, go ahead.
Hi, Lisa. Did the planning board comment on the condominium ownership provision in the bill such that, as I understand it, as long as the land is owned as a condominium, the building requirements are relaxed even further in the bill?
We did not comment on that. We did not get into that part.
Okay, thanks.
Lawrence Spicer, go ahead.
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks for making this an open forum. So this is statewide legislation. Do we know anything about the status of this bill in Annapolis? And what happens if they pass it? Do we have to accept it as it is, or can we make amendments to it, or what's going on with that?
You want to go?
Yeah, it's pending in the legislature. They just had hearings in the House and the Senate in the last week or so, and so that's where it is. Once they pass a state law, I don't think a local jurisdiction can make amendments that would be contrary to the state law. All zoning and land use authority is granted from the state to localities. Ed Novak, go ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you. One question I have is that I thought there were areas of, in particular, Chevy Chase, the Village, and perhaps other areas in which the lot sizes and the homes have deed restrictions that are written into the deeds that would prohibit certainly historic structures from being raised and redeveloped. Does that still stay in place?
I'm not sure. That is a really good question. I can look into that, ask our legal department. But I do know, so the municipalities are allowed to make things more restrictive than the county, but the state, again, would be preempting local control and would override that. But I'm not sure about the deed restriction question, but I'll write it down.
There is an exception for historic areas,
yeah,
by the way. Tip Walker, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm just a little confused a little bit. But one of the write-ups I heard about this was talking about the future role of the planning departments going forward. And at least in this particular version of it was basically saying that your ability to actually plan anything was going to be greatly diminished because of the preemption of the state. And I guess what I'm sort of wondering about is, from your standpoint, from a board that is trying to reconcile a variety of different pressures that are, unique to Montgomery County. How does all of this sort of fit together with things about smart growth and about making sure, for example, that we're building in places where we have adequate transportation, where we have adequate schools and so forth? And it doesn't seem to me that the sort of one size fits all model that the state wants to impose here is making any kind of provision for those kinds of more subtle variations from geography to geography within the state.
So that's a great question. So like I said, the planning board didn't really get into the debate about preemption, but I will say that we did ask in our comments to be able to, master plan effectively, implement adequate public facilities. These are things that are really important to the planning board. And that's one of the reasons that we also asked for a change in geography to priority funding areas, because that is more in line with areas where we want to see where growth. I had a chart that I didn't include in the PowerPoint for the sake of time, but as currently written, there are some pretty rural residential areas that would be under the provision of this bill that have currently 5-acre lot minimums, and the planning board felt that that's not the area where we want to see growth, and that's why we asked for changes to geography. But I can include that in the slides that I send to Cheryl, so you can see that chart.
Okay, Kevin Bromberg, go ahead.
Hi, Lisa. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Old friend. So my recollection is that lot coverage requirements are prohibited in this state bill. And that, of course, is a significant problem for stormwater, because if you have setbacks of 5 on the sides and 10 in the rear, and no lot coverage requirements, you're going to be creating a lot of rainfall over non-permeable areas. Has the planning board submitted comments on the lot coverage requirement? Because I don't recall.
I do not believe so. One of the things that I'll send Cheryl is the comments the planning board sent. I don't know why we didn't talk about lot coverage. We spent a lot of time talking about the lot sizes and the setbacks, but for whatever reason, we didn't really talk about lot coverage. So I don't really remember if the planning board discussed it or not. I don't think they did.
Did they? But they did discuss the setbacks? I forget.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Linda Nemec, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Lisa, could either you or Cheryl just talk about the overall goal of the legislation, given that we just heard that there are no requirements for affordable housing? And okay, I'll let you answer that first question first.
Sure. So I think, again, I don't want to speak for DHCD, but I think this is one of their goals was to basically make it easier to build starter homes and homes for downsizing seniors, hence the name Starter and Silver Act. One of the reasons that they wanted smaller lot sizes, from my understanding, is that it can help open up more lots and build smaller homes. Now, how that fits in with all of the other provisions, I could not speak for, but from my understanding, it was intended to incentivize smaller homes for starter homes and downsizing seniors.
I see. So would there be any data that supports that is needed in the county?
Sure. So I think the county, like many counties in Maryland and the country, is struggling with affordability crisis. We are not building enough homes. I think that in Montgomery County, the average new home, detached home, goes for over $2 million. So, certainly that is not affordable. But I think that, I will say this. in our conversations with DHCD, Montgomery County does a lot for housing. We have very progressive values and that we've done a lot. And there are other counties that aren't doing as much as we are. And so I think counties like Baltimore County, for example, from what I understand, are not quite as supportive as housing as we are. So I think that this is, a one-size-fits-all approach at addressing housing affordability across the state.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry Garson, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is on, should we be building any housing in Montgomery County, any additional housing? Because right now, under the adequate public facilities, we see the peak traffic on the Beltway westbound, according to State Highway Administration, is between 5 and 6 a.m. After 6 a.m., we start diverting traffic onto local roads such as University Boulevard, Dale Boulevard, and every place else. We also see, this is the traffic counter that they've done the work on, is just east of US 29. And we also see that the American Legion Bridge, for the last 2 weeks that I've looked at the traffic, had peak traffic on Saturday, but that was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then we see after that and before that, the traffic every day is backed up. How can you say we have adequate public facilities that we can accommodate more housing without building additional roads? Maybe you guys are going to propose an additional bridge over the Potomac River. And my other question is about affordable housing. We just saw that 26 new homes were built, townhouses, just north of Josiah Henson Parkway and south of Montrose Road on vacant land. The average price of the 26 homes was $1,069,000. Is this affordable housing for most people in the county?
Sure. Do you want me to answer adequate public facilities question first, or the affordable housing? Sure. So I think, Jerry, we've talked a lot about, the county has an adequate public facilities ordinance. And the planning board did ask to make sure that we could implement the adequate public facility ordinance should this bill pass. Adequate public facilities is very important to the planning board. And that's something that, again, that we asked to implement. In terms of affordable housing, do I think $1 million homes are affordable? No. We do have an inclusionary zoning program. So, 12.5% to 15% of those homes would have to be affordable. But certainly, it's not enough. It's never enough. It's very expensive to build here, and the for sale prices are very expensive. And so, we do need to build more housing, and that includes more affordable housing in the county.
Before we go to the next question for Lisa, there's a lot in the chat going on about other people, other entities' positions. After this, I have a brief update on what the county executive proposed and Prince George's County, and some of the issues that are being addressed at the state. If you could just hold those questions. Liz Roblin, go ahead. Liz? We'll come back to Liz. Sonia, go.
I don't have a question. I just put something in the chat that I think
I'm not
might
talking to you, Liz. I'm talking to Liz Roblin.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Sonia Garcia, go ahead. We'll come back to Liz.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So first, talking about the whole affordability, and there is an actual affordability requirements. So do you have any ideas of what the starting price of a home would be? For example, in my area is a lot of R60 lots. Do you have some sort of idea of what the pricing would be?
Price varies throughout the county based on where you are. I would say that the average new detached home in Montgomery County last year went for over $2 million. The average new detached townhouse is about $900,000. This is countywide, and that the average for sale detached home, not new, just resale, was $1 million. So it's expensive. It's pricey to live here, certainly, and to buy.
So, for example, in Montgomery County, we have the Office of Racial and Equity and Social Justice Office. And so, and their mission is to reduce the racial disparities and inequities. And so, given with this bill, could increase development without these affordability requirements, are there any equity frameworks or analysis at the state level to evaluate, or even with the county, collaboration with the county, to evaluate those potential impacts, especially with, it could rise property taxes, the cost of living is already increasing, and then increasing the risk of displacement of low income residents and seniors who are on a very fixed income.
Sure. So I can't speak for what the state does, but I will tell you that in Montgomery County, should these changes be implemented, they would have to be implemented through something called a zoning tax amendment, which would change the zoning code. And all ZTAs are evaluated for Res J impacts. So even it would come later after the state had already passed their bill, but it would be evaluated. So that's something that would happen in Montgomery County after.
So do you know if there's anything work in the state level that is actually analyzing anything in the equity or risk of displacement at all?
I'm not sure. I don't work for the state, but I can certainly ask if you want to. I'll send my PowerPoint and you can email me, and I can ask someone at the state for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Lisa, has the planning board weighed in on the notion that developers could use this law to circumvent the affordable housing requirement under More Housing Now? The workforce housing requirement under More Housing Now, because this is a by right development.
We did not discuss that with the planning board.
Okay. Liz Roblin, are you back now?
I am. I'm sorry. I was pushing the wrong button.
Okay.
Am I correct in my what I've seen so far? There is actually no method for a community or a county to appeal in, like, for instance, on a case-by-case basis. And I'm thinking specifically if, for instance, they were to come up with documentation saying impact analysis of impact on the public schools, which would, that they would then appeal because the density in the public schools and the populations would be unworkable. Is there any way to appeal once, this is put in place?
I don't believe so. There's nothing to do that right now. Adequate public facilities on the school basis right now they're generally fee-based. So when you go to DPS to get your building permit, you pay something called impact fees. And if the school that you're in it's overcrowded or overutilized, then you pay a little bit more. That's generally how it works. It's kind of, you pay for your impact that you're having, and your impact is estimated by the average number of students generated by that dwelling type. But I don't believe you can appeal.
Nancy, go ahead. You're muted. Nancy, you're muted. There you go.
I am in the senior category, and I spend my time with a lot of seniors. I have never heard one of them say they want to get a small piece of land and build a house. It tends not to be what seniors are thinking about as they're 70, 75 years old. Now, maybe the seniors they're talking about are 40. I don't know, but it does. I would like to know if there are data that support the idea that seniors are looking for small plots of land to build houses on. I think what's going to happen is, certainly in Montgomery County, is if this were to pass, you're going to have the density of very big houses on small lots built out to the limit because they can do that. And that's what's going to happen. It isn't going to be the starter houses. Land is expensive in Montgomery County. Is there any kind of argument that the county is making about what will happen if something like this goes forward? As is already said, there's nothing about affordable housing in this.
Sure. So I think not to speak for the state, but I think generally in Montgomery County, a couple of years ago, we did an older adults housing study that said that most seniors that want to age in place. So I think that's the genesis of where they're trying to come from, is allowing more homes in the communities that people live in. But certainly your point is, well taken. I don't know. I can't speak for the state, but I don't believe there was any data except some in the introductory press conference and press release about the bill that I can look up and send to Cheryl.
But has there been any thought, thinking through of what the real consequences of this would be, as opposed to we like this or don't like that? I mean, it will be gamed for sure.
I think the state, is attempting to address the housing affordability crisis in the state, making it easier to build on smaller lots of land. As to what impact studies the state has done, I can't speak for the state. I can just tell you that we evaluated it from the planning board, looking at, where this would apply, and try to, find sensible amendments that could help it fit better in our zoning code.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have to break in here a little bit because Delegate Jared Solomon is here and he wanted to say hello to people. So we're going to let Delegate go ahead. If you could hang in, Lisa. He just wants to say hello.
Hi, Cheryl. How are you?
good.
Sorry to interrupt, Lisa. I was actually interested as well. Just wanted to say hello to folks. I see a lot of very familiar faces on the call. Appreciate so many of our association leaders, our municipal leaders. Delegate Jared Solomon, I represent District 18, which is the Connecticut Avenue corridor. So Chevy Chase, Kensington, Wheaton, Silver Spring, a lot of municipalities have spent a lot of time working with our municipalities on, and actually our planning board on some local legislation last year around municipal authorities. So appreciate everybody's partnership on that. I just wanted to say I've caught some of the conversation. As Cheryl knows, I've got two toddlers, and I don't see them very much during the week during sessions. So the weekends are kind of sacred. So I'm glad that at least I was able to jump on for a little bit, and I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes, but then I've got to jump off to go back to them. But I just wanted to share. So I do not serve on the Economic Matters Committee. I think Lisa's probably gone over where the bill sits right now. This obviously was a proposal from the governor. This was not a bill that any individual legislator put forward. And in all honesty, the governor did not consult with us. And the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, which is sort of pursuing this, also did not consult with us. So I just kind of want to make that clear from the outset. I know I've had that conversation with a lot of folks. This is a proposal from the governor. This is not something that was put forward by individual legislators or the Montgomery County delegation. And I know I saw a number of my colleagues were on earlier. I think a lot of us have very serious concerns. So what's going on right now with this bill is it's in the Economic Matters Committee. It had its hearing, I believe, 2 weeks ago in the House, last week in the Senate. And it is undergoing a lot of changes, is my understanding. I've spoken to colleagues in the Speaker's office, aired a lot of the concerns that I've heard from many of you. I've talked with MML, the Maryland Municipal League, MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, who I know are intimately engaged with DHCD and the governor's team on negotiations. I'm really excited to see Lisa's presentation. We've been, in touch with folks in the county. I will just tell you where this bill sits right now is not something that I would be particularly interested in supporting. And I think many of my colleagues feel the same way. It's got a long way to go. And so, sort of general talk about amendments is one thing. Actually seeing legislative text and having it ready to be potentially voted on by the Economic Matters Committee is a very different story. And my guess is a lot of our colleagues who have joined today probably said something similar. Again, the governor's prerogative is to put in whatever piece of legislation he wants. That doesn't mean that the General Assembly has to pass it. I think that the county has tried to strike a balance. Again, I mentioned that local bill that we worked on with our sort of 12 sub-municipalities that, don't have full zoning authority like a Rockville or a Gaithersburg. We just passed that last year unanimously. And that was a partnership, again, between our municipalities, the county, and the planning board. So it's a little disconcerting, quite honestly, as somebody who spent about a year working on that with many of the partners on this call, to see a piece of legislation dropped that would basically wipe it all away and completely override the work that we did and the collaboration and the compromise. So I share your frustration. And again, I think there's got to be a lot of work done on this bill before I would feel comfortable voting for it. I just wanted folks to know, again, I think it's really important. Please share this with your colleagues and friends and neighbors who are on this call. This was a proposal from the governor. he is able to put in whatever he wants. This does not mean that this is a bill that we support. And so, please keep emailing. I think we get probably at least 5 or 6 emails a day, and appreciate Cheryl's leadership. Love it when we have D18 constituents leading the Civic Federation. So really grateful that she brought you all together. I will drop my email in the chat, although I'm sure most of you know what our standard emails are, but we've been getting a lot of messages, and it's really helpful. Most of us are not zoning experts. We tend not to deal with a lot of sort of really messy zoning issues in the General Assembly. So for a lot of folks, this is new. So hearing directly from residents and community associations and our municipal leaders is really important. So again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking your time out on Sunday to get educated on this. And again, Cheryl, thank you to you and the Civic Federation for putting this together. And like I said, I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. I'll drop my information in the chat, and then I'm gonna have to hop off. But thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, Jared. Delegate Teresa Warman wants to chime in. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thanks, Lisa, for doing this and fielding the hard questions. This is my second session being a legislator, and I'm a relatively new homeowner, so listening to all this is actually really interesting, so thank you for that. Like Jared said, I don't sit on the committee. I sit on the health committee, and we as legislators, when we sit on a committee, we get to see all of the testimony that comes in. And when we don't sit on the committee, like the Economic Matters Committee that's hearing all of this, I don't get to see all the testimony. So when you guys write in and when these kind of things, it's actually really helpful for us. In my day job, I work for the county government, and I see a lot of the great things that you guys are doing down on the ground. And the reason why I don't put in bills like this one is because I just see the good things that Montgomery County is doing, and I know that the rest of the state has to be pulled along. I know that somebody mentioned it during this conversation that, a lot of this is going to be asking other counties that are not doing as much as what we're doing to do more. But at the same time, that's why I don't delve into zoning issues at the state level. I'm very glad to see that our county executive weighed in on this and has some really good amendments to make this better. But I will also echo Jared's comments on this, that as it was introduced, I did not support it. I'd never think that a one size fits all that will work ever in Montgomery County and in the whole state of Maryland. We're way too diverse for that. But I am very happy to see that your guys' comments are actually shaping the conversation that's happening in Annapolis, because that is what shapes the bill. So please keep writing to us. If you guys want to get more updates on, more on the ground updates on how this is going, my office is, I also put my information on here. My office is glad to update you on some of that. And I'll thank you guys for your time on a Sunday. I'll stick around for the rest of the presentation, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Citizens Coordinating Committee for a question for Lisa. Can you unmute yourself? Let's move
Lisa,
to
hi. I wanted to ask a quick question about your data. I agree with you that housing in the county is extremely expensive, but that average that you mentioned, is that a median housing price? Or is
That's a good question. If the average detached home goes for $1 million, but the median's around 800,000.
Okay, I think that sounds a little more realistic. I appreciate that.
Okay, Mike Gerwitz.
Good afternoon, Lisa. So large trees with their extensive root systems and their large canopies grow in front yards and backyards. So in addition to the problems for trees by the setbacks provisions of this proposed legislation, it seems to me that allowing townhouses by right and with the issue of no off-street parking provisions, it seems to me that those townhouses by right would be built in front yards and backyards where there are now existing large trees and the benefits they bring. Did the planning board have any comments specifically addressing the issue of trees with regard to loss of the green parts of lots?
I do not believe so. Again, I will send the comments that the planning board sent up. Mostly had to do with utilities and stormwater management. But I will say the one thing, Mike, is that the bill says that you have to allow townhouses in single family zones, but it does not say that you have to allow them by right. Again, We already allow townhouses in our single family zones through the optional method of development. It's not by right. You need in R60, you need 3 acres, and you need to go through planning board approval. But we think that our zoning code already allows for townhouses in single family zones.
Okay, Shazga, last question for Lisa.
Thank you. This is a question for Lisa, and I hope the legislators are listening in. Do we have any data at either that you're aware of at either the state level or in Montgomery County that gives us an idea as best as possible about the number of affordable housing units that are needed for our residents, Montgomery County and the state? So for our state legislatures, delegates who are on this call, this is what you need to be asking about. What is the number of affordable housing units that we need? And how can we get incentivized and provide those kinds of units rather than just blanket development? And then Lisa, if you have any data from Montgomery County, I've never encountered any, and it would be like really interesting to get that information. Thank you.
Sure. So at the planning department, we've done some supply and demand analysis. I think you're right on point that there is a huge need for affordable housing in this county. There is also a huge need just for housing overall and for housing, market rate housing. The county is losing middle income households, but it's growing at the top and the bottom. So we're adding low income households and we're adding high income households, but we're not adding middle income households. We're losing those. We are currently updating our housing needs assessment at the planning department, and we expect to have that completed by the end of the year. But I can send you the one from 2020. It's a little out of date, and it was like uses data from before COVID time, so it's not as on point as I would like. But we have done some preliminary work in this regard.
And I'll jump into, if you don't mind, Cheryl, on the data question.
Who is that?
Sarah Wallach.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First, thanks so much for having this conversation. It's been very helpful for me to see the presentation and also just hear all the questions that the community is posing. So just by way of very quick introduction, Delegate Sarah Wallach, representing District 16. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting in person, I serve on the Appropriations Committee, but economic development is a very strong interest of mine. I have about 4 bills in that space this session. Wanted to go back to the question that was just asked about data and just remind folks, if they were not aware, that last session I had a bill. It was House Bill 1193, specifically asking the state to gather data around sort of the kind of housing that we are putting forward. Beginning January of next year, so 27, the state will be reporting that information on a quarterly basis, and it is pretty comprehensive. The goal is to have information with regard to, the permit was when it was approved, when a particular unit can be occupied, the address, the permit type, the cost of construction, whether it's a single family, townhouse, apartment, triplex, quadplex, the nature of essentially of the housing. So all of that should be available to all of us, which I think would be really, really useful as we think about thoughtful housing policy. So hopefully that's just, something good for you all to know. We don't have it yet. So we still do need to wait, I guess at this point, another 10 months for that to start happening on a regular basis. On this particular issue, I just wanted to weigh in and say the way the bill is drafted is not something that I'm supportive of. I'll echo what Delegate Solomon had mentioned, that this is the governor's bill. And I saw some commentary on the chat about, feeling pressure to pass it. I can say personally, I don't feel the pressure to pass this bill. I only feel pressure to pass good, legislation that is reflective of what makes sense. And I don't believe this is where it needs to be. So, and yeah, I'll go out on a limb and say that I am hearing that, right? That is not limited to my opinion. That sort of perspective is gaining a little bit of steam in Annapolis, and so folks like myself and others are sharing our feedback. I've had the opportunity to talk to members serving on economic matters, and so they're hearing from us, they're hearing from you, and it's certainly going to help shape this. Now, whether or not it gets ready by the end of the session, right? I mean, let's be frank, a lot of bills don't pass the first time they're brought forward because they're simply not ready. They're not solving the problem that they're hoping to address. And they require work, and we have 90 days, and we may not get there. And that's okay. We don't need to rush something that is not ready for prime time. So we'll see sort of where it all lands. But again, these kinds of conversations, the emails, the folks who came, I had an opportunity to see some of you who came to Annapolis and testified. So thank you to everyone for their advocacy. That is really how everything translates into good policy. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm here. I've been listening from the beginning. I'll stick around because it's very important, even though it may not be ready. I will say the intention, I completely understand. We do need housing for folks who are entering the market, who want to, those starter homes, we need them. We also need homes for our seniors who are looking to downsize. So I think the need is correct. The how, though, needs a lot of work. So I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Lisa, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time. That was a great PowerPoint, and we've had numerous requests for it. It'll be on the Civic Fed website for people who want to find it, and it will be emailed to our members. Lisa, you're welcome to stay. We're going to talk a little bit about the county executive's position and my testimony. We have about another half an hour. You are welcome to stay if useful to you to listen, or you can reclaim your Sunday afternoon, entirely up to you, but just know that we all really appreciate your work.
Thank you. And I'll put my email in the chat should anyone have any, zoning questions.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So I couldn't get a speaker from the county executive office. So I wanted to say that I attended both hearings and spent a lot of time there from start to finish. And the Prince George's County Council and executive have put forth a compromise, an amendment that relates to them and helps them. And our county executive put forward a similar amendment that would operate in the same way with one small difference. What both of those amendments do is say the state should really just be creating targets and let the counties meet those targets as long as they're meeting them on a 3-year rolling average. Let them meet those targets using their own existing rules and processes. Now, Prince George's County thinks the targets should be the governor's housing targets. That I'll say something about that number in a minute. But Mark Elrich's position is it should be zoned capacity where approvals to build have gone forward, meeting targets developed between the planning board, our planning board, and the Council of Governments. We've always used Council of Governments targets, and they have a lot of experience with projections. One of the things that happened was that Mark Elrich spent about a half an hour talking to Jake Day in the hallway at the House hearing. And Mark told me later that he said to Jake Day, I don't understand where your projections are coming from. They're so much different than the Council of Government, so much higher. And Jake Day said that's because our numbers aren't projections, they're aspirational numbers of how many people in houses we would like to see. So that's a big problem, just inventing an aspirational number that's not actually tethered to projections about migration or job growth or the income groups that are going to be moving here. the numbers are so high that I don't think we could meet them in Montgomery County. I did ask my contact on the Prince George's Council what Jake Day reaction was to their amendment, and he answered me that Jake Day thinks the targets should be built units. And of course, as they point out, and I think Mark Elrich would say the same thing, counties can't be responsible once they give an approval to go forward and build. They can't be responsible for whether a developer actually builds. That is a complicated process that involves construction costs and projections on whether you can fill your units or sell them, and construction costs and financing. A lot of complicated things come into it that the counties don't control. But there is a county executive position. The county executive also pointed out that the goal has been for everyone building housing where jobs are so that people are living near jobs. And this would just sprinkle them wherever developers want to put them, which is mostly going to be in the south part of the county. And the zoned capacity is along our job corridors, which is the 270 and 355 corridor. So there's a mismatch there. Mark Elwich also pointed out in his testimony what developers have said is the lowest price that they can, build townhouses for. It's quite high. It's in this upper 700s at a minimum. But also developers have said that in any particular neighborhood, the price will be the highest price that that neighborhood can support in the market. So that's what's going on with the county executive. I will say, just as a personal point, was the Prince George's County Council got organized very quickly to oppose the bill as written and produce their amendment. They were present. They sent one of their senators that was not on the Senate committee to present their amendment from the testimony table. Our county executive was there. I was disappointed not to see anyone from the county council. They didn't testify, didn't show up. They haven't released any public statements on it. The Civic Federation testified. Our testimony will be on our website. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just going to sort of run through the basic points that I testified to are things that I was hearing from our delegates in our discussions. This turns the development process basically over to developers to decide where and how townhouses get developed without resident input that we have under optional method, and erases our current rules on lot coverage, height, setbacks, and compatibility. There's no connection between untethered market rate housing and affordability. And this does provide a backdoor way for developers to avoid the workforce housing requirement that was just enacted in More Housing Now. There's no provisions for infrastructure needs. Our growth and infrastructure policy requires infrastructure to be paced alongside development and support development. I don't think it always works so great. Take a look at our overcrowded schools, but we do have a requirement. So, some people have been calling this an unfunded mandate. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right term, but it does kind of explain that we are going to have to produce the infrastructure for this in this county. And there's no money that comes with this bill from the state. Permitting often gives waivers for stormwater management. In fact, in More Housing Now, initially the planning staff had recommended that stormwater management be non-waivable now because there's so many stormwater runoff problems lot to lot. And that was rejected by the planning board. And Mitra Padim, who used to be the head of permitting, said nothing will be built if there are waivers. I mean, if it's non-waivable. So you can expect waivers to be given. The expanded lot coverage allows for covering more of the lot than currently allowed. It diminishes green space and threatens tree coverage and harms the environment. I'll just mention Silver Spring downtown, for example, has an 8% tree canopy coverage, the lowest in the county, and NOAA has declared the area to be a heat island. And so we have trouble meeting our climate goals. The communities around downtown Silver Spring, as Kathleen Sammy, who's been very active on these issues, has said, that those communities and their trees are literally the lungs of Silver Spring. The prohibitions on curtailing the outside dimensions of the units or the heights can lead to very dense and tall development next to single-family homes. And as Planning Board Mitra Badim said about by right development just this week, she said it leads to chaos. There's no part of permitting that allows denial due to inadequate infrastructure or environmental considerations. And they're allowed to waive stormwater management, and they usually do. In our testimony, we endorse the concept that the county executive and Prince George's County have put forward, that the housing, that the state can set targets, but that the local control should remain in place. So you can find the Civic Fed's testimony on our website, and I will now open this up for more discussion if people want to talk to each other about this bill. You just raise your hands, though. There's a lot of comments in the chat, and some of it is people arguing with each other, which I ask people not to do. Some of it is things that seems like people want to say out loud, and I can't keep up with it and manage this program. So if there's something you want to say to us, can you please speak it out loud? Oh, the other thing I want to say is, so we are joined today by Erica Jorgensen, who's an economist from the Citizens Coordinating Committee of Friendship Heights. You may or may not know that the underlying policy basis that the governor's office has used for this bill is a report that the comptroller did on the state of housing. Erica has done a good critique of that report. And Erica, did you want to join in and tell us about that report?
Sure. Why don't I'll give you a quick intro, then I'm going to just give you the 2-minute testimony that I delivered to the House and Senate committee. So for those of you who aren't aware, the comptroller's October 2025 report on housing was cited as the analytic justification for this bill. And so as an economist, I wanted to look to see whether the arguments were valid or not. So I'll give you my 2-minute spiel, and then, if people have questions. And there is a 1-page, a 3-page, and a 10-page version of this critique available. I don't know if Cheryl's already circulated. Okay. So hello, everyone. I'm Erica Jorgensen. I've lived in MoCA almost 20 years. I hold a PhD in economics from Harvard University, as well as degrees from Oxford University Williams College. I spent 30 years at the World Bank analyzing and advising on economic policy for governments around the world. We, the residents of Maryland, expect you, our legislature, as this testimony, to make decisions based on data and solid analysis. I'm sorry to tell you that's not the case for the bill you're considering today. The recent comptroller's report on housing sadly falls far short, particularly in forecasting the future based on the pandemic years using data ending in 2023. But I have good news for you. Things are much better today in Maryland than the report concludes. And I refer you to my written testimony. Here's what it covers. First, net outmigration from Maryland is actually modest, and it fell by half from 2023 to 2024. And why are people leaving the state? Because of housing? No, for jobs or to be near family. That's according to the United Van Line's annual survey for more than 160,000 moves last year. Next, housing prices in Maryland are now barely holding flat in real terms, plummeting over the last 4 years to about 4% annual growth, just above inflation. And that's according to the state's own property tax assessments. A buyer's market is emerging, says the Maryland Association of Realtors, and Maryland's large federal job losses will surely accelerate that. Next, Maryland has the nation's 4th highest household income, so wages are higher here, and that pushes up building costs. We're also the 6th most densely populated state, and so our land is expensive. But here's a surprise: our housing prices are 16th in the nation, cheaper than you might expect. Last, is preempting single-family zoning a magical, costless solution? New research finds that the trickle-down benefits from upzoning are too small and too slow, taking decades to materialize. Upzoning cannot solve housing affordability, and in the meantime, local communities will bear the cost of erratic, profit-driven building that imposes economic, environmental, and social costs on established neighborhoods. Thank you. So that was my 2-minute testimony. But as I said, it's the intent of my analysis was just to critique what was put forward, the arguments put forward in the comptroller's report. It's not coverage of all the arguments one might have against this bill, or even trying to analyze what the bill will actually do. It's simply trying to look at the arguments that they put forward to justify the bill and ask whether they seemed valid or not. So I'll stop there.
Leanne Tobias, go ahead. Thank you, Erica.
I just wanted to build a little bit on what Erica was saying. CCCFH also did an analysis of the median prices of listed townhomes on the market in January to the December 2025 listed median prices for existing homes. And we were able to get data for 7 counties in Maryland. This was pretty much across the state. And what we found was in 5 of those 7 counties, existing townhomes were, new townhomes were 9% to 41% more expensive than existing median prices for existing homes. So building new townhouses is not going to reduce housing prices unless there is a subsidy attached. And if you don't believe me, I think that an interesting quote was from the president of EYA, speaking on Thursday night at a presentation of an EYA project that's going up in Friendship Heights that includes many townhomes. He was asked about affordability, and he said that it was hard to build affordable townhomes, and that when EYA does so, it does so in conjunction with county subsidy programs and county inclusionary zoning programs, which requires that a certain percentage of the units built be reserved for affordable purchase. So I just wanted to say that there really is not good evidence that if this bill is enacted, that it will produce the affordable housing that everyone would hope it would produce. So I think that other approaches are necessary, and just wanted to make that point. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Leanne. Stacy Band put into the chat, but I think it's been buried with people beefing at each other. But Stacy, you had a sign-on letter that from Citizens Coordinating Committee that people can sign on to if they want to. And can you put that link again in the chat so that it's on the bottom where people can see it, find it? Looks like Stacy's doing it now. It wasn't developed by the Civic Federation, but the Citizens Coordinating Committee is one of our members, and we do a lot of collaboration with them. So they have a sign-on letter if you need something quick and easy.
Can I add one last note, Cheryl, before I sign off?
Yeah,
Which is
sure.
that I know that a lot of people are talking about, whether or not building more market rate housing will eventually drive down average housing prices. But be clear that that is not the argument put forward under this bill. This bill claims that the townhouses built will be 30% less expensive right off the bat. So this will create cheaper housing, 30% cheaper right away. That is their claim. They're not claiming that, luxury townhouses. No, their claim is the houses that this will allow will be cheap. So, that's, I think, a key element of their argument.
Good point. Stacy, is this a link though? Let me see. Yep. Wait. Oh, you can click on it. The jot form. You see what's highlighted in Stacy's comment in blue. If you want to copy that for yourself while it's still there, that is the link to a jot form.
And Cheryl, we can supply you the link so that you can provide it to members of your organization if you're able.
Yeah, we can do that. There's a lot of people on here who are from neighborhoods and are not on the delegate list.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't distribute it. I just want to try to make it available to people who are here, but it won't get a later So the links are there. Does anybody want to add anything to this discussion or directions to the Civic Fed or, oh, Danielle's asking if there's a deadline to sign the job form. Is there a deadline?
At the moment, there is. We're keeping it open. So as long as people are signing it, we will keep it open.
Okay. MJ, go ahead. MJ Langland. You're muted. We'll come back to you. Liz Joyce, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that the fundamental theory behind this proposal is that zoning in itself is the problem, and that fundamental changes in zoning will be the solution. And there is a great deal of scholarship now that challenges that assumption. Actually, what has happened is that we've had 50 years of neglect of housing policy at the national, state, and local level. And this seems to be a magical solution to a problem that's much more complicated. The context is much wider. So the issue is really, will rezoning be the solution? And we need the data to that. And as Dr. Jorgensen said, they claim that this will create a 30% decrease in the cost of housing. And there's no citation for the source of that figure, which is quite stunning.
Liz did a lot of work on the pipeline analysis that planning did, and they asked developers when things stuck in the pipeline, why weren't they moving forward? And zoning was very far down the list. The real issues were financing, construction costs, and things like that. So zoning's not the issue. We have a lot of things that are approved and ready to go. I'm kind of interested in, there was a report done on Pike and Rose development, which I forget the exact statistic, but something like at the current rate they're building things that are approved and ready to go to permit. It'll take 50 years to build out all the approvals. And planning did a study and asked the developers why the uptake was so slow. And their answer was that our job projections don't justify moving any faster. So in other words, the developers are not going to build something if they can't fill the building or sell it. They need to see that there's jobs that are going to bring people here to the area to live in those houses. So I just point that out as well. Anything else anyone wants to say before we close off? I strongly encourage you all to write to your delegates and senators, whether you're for this or against it or something in between. It's really important that they hear from you. It's essential, actually. As you know, we don't have lobbyists. We have us. So, oh, Sherry, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I just want to thank you for putting this together just to start. And I come from a community that's right next door to Pike and Rose. And we are watching slowly lots of buildings coming in. So when we start talking about the absence, there's really one that's more focused on more MPDUs. Most of them are high end. They advertise as luxury. And so there's kind of like this real mismatch here in terms of the goals and I want to really support what Liz said. I mean, there's a real mismatch between what the stated goals are and actually the process that they're setting out to fix it. But I would be remiss if this call goes forward, this Zoom ends without echoing what you said about stormwater. I mean, this is so dear to our community's heart because Hurricane Ida happened, and some of you heard me talk about this before, but we have a whole segment of our community where basements got flooded, and thank God nobody was in the basement and got killed, frankly. And there was multi-thousands, almost millions of dollars worth of damage. And we since then have become very sensitive to ensuring both trees and stormwater regulations and so forth. So it's very disturbing when we hear planning say we need to waive them because otherwise nothing would get built. That's not the answer. The answer is, what are we doing incorrectly in stormwater management? And why aren't we thinking of a more positive, forward-thinking solution rather than just build and build and build? And it just doesn't make sense to me. So I want to echo what you're saying, Cheryl, and I think the arguments that you're making on stormwater are just right, exactly perfect.
Thank you. And also, I would like you to tell people about what you told me about how this has to go with infrastructure and school capacity, and how you had some apartment buildings and they said kids don't live in apartment buildings. And now what happened?
And we're living it right now with the whole discussion of school boundaries and Woodward High School, where the MCPS refuses to include in their projections any building that is not complete and moved in. And we have this massive number of almost more than 6,000 units. And if you count the White Flint property, that's 12,000 units that are being built right now or projected to be built in the pipeline. And so we look at that number, and we have a school that they're building to 90%, almost 91% of capacity. And where are all those kids going to go? And they'll say, oh, those apartments don't really have kids. But we lived this before, because at Pike and Rose, they told us those apartments were going to be adult-only apartments. And eventually, we had multiple school buses coming to Lux Manor Elementary School, which is why we ultimately had to push for an expansion of that building. There is a true mismatch and not very good coordination, or coordination at all, between what planning does and MCPS does, which is, we're kind of like a cautionary tale for many of you in your communities, where they really are not thinking at all about planning and how it relates to kids and how it relates to school enrollment and ultimately how children learn. So I'll leave it there. But Cheryl, thanks for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. Danielle, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I am not by any means as well versed as most of the people who have been here, but I can say that it strikes me as there's been it appears as though there's been a real push towards, there's going to be an expansion. The Purple Line was pushed forward the way it was, and we're seeing the direct result of that. And quite frankly, I think immediate short-term solutions end up costing the residents more, because we see these implementation of things that really have not been well thought out for short-term gains, for developers to be able to line their pockets and walk away, and we're stuck with the brunt of that. So I think, I think putting the brakes and I mean, I think you can't stop that there's going to be population growth. I think studying it and addressing it is smart, but how we address it, I think, is really critical. And trying to rush something for the sake of rushing it is just going to end up giving us more issues in the long run. And so I appreciate, hearing that the brakes should be pumped a little. And I'm not saying development needs to be stopped. I mean, you can't stop it. You can't stop growth. But at least to approach it with a common sense kind of vision, and also to understand that, maybe what might cost a little bit more now might end up saving us money in the long run, especially when you think of water management and green cover overhead, because these have very real long-term ramifications. And yeah, maybe it might cost a little bit more now, but it'll save us not only, I think, in waste and water management, but also in the beauty of the neighborhoods, right? Because greenery does increase property values. So that's all I needed to say. Sorry.
Okay. Karen Bolte.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to, especially since we have some of our District 16 delegates on the call, really reinforce a lot of this discussion about infrastructure and school capacity, especially about sewage. I live in Wildwood Manor in Bethesda. Our pipes are 70 plus years old. And if the sewage fails, and, we're all very familiar with the failure of the Potomac interceptor, there's no C&O canal in our neighborhoods in which to divert, any sewage spills that might occur if our systems are stressed to capacity or beyond capacity. And then with stormwater, we've had lots of discussions with Lux Manor, very well aware of their flooding problems because of a lot of the development at Pike and Rose. I just heard from one of our residents, I'm the president of our Citizens Association, who posted on our listserv just today. They're looking for any advice, experience, or suggestions for amelioration to the problem that they're having with water seepage below their side window of their partially underground corner bedroom. By now they have a mildewed carpet and padding, which they now are in the process of throwing out. And, that is a current situation. That is not, that's the situation that, a neighbor of ours is dealing with right now. Not, that would be completely exacerbated if they have a townhouse next to them that's 5 feet away from their current house. And then the same thing, school capacity. Lisa talked about, having to pay impact fees, but that is not working. The WJ, and of course the school boundary study is going on, but WJ is currently at 133.6% capacity. Our middle school is at 103.5% capacity, and our elementary school, Ashburton Elementary School, has had a COSA, a change of school assignment, to either Lux Manor or Wingate for both this current school year and next school year. So, and to a point that Sherry also made, where they're not considering all the development that has already been approved in Montgomery County, there's also no way for the school district to accurately predict, at least now you're having new families moving in so that you maybe have more children in a current house, but there's going to be no way for them to predict when you have a turnover of 3 new houses where there was previously 1 house. So I do think that these concerns that all of us as residents in our communities have raised about these issues really need to be considered by the state before they move forward with such a sweeping proposal as what's been put on the table. Thanks, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you. And there's a comment in the chat that reminds me, Erica, you have a statistic about upzoning. How long does it take for upzoning to decrease prices?
Well, there was a recent study done that was very nicely done, because what it did is it took the most optimistic estimates that came out of many studies about how upzoning reduces prices over time. This is the trickle down idea that even if you build luxury housing, eventually it trickles down and housing gets cheaper. And so it took kind of the most optimistic estimates about impact, and sort of then just did calculations. And so it ranges from 16 years to 100 years before you get any kind of widespread affordability of housing. So it trickled down is really slow, very slow. It's a very silly way to think about affordable housing.
I think, Paula, you were next.
Thanks. Thanks again, Cheryl and Civic Fed. This is just really fascinating. I actually put my hand up when Sherry was speaking. I was on the White Flint Advisory Committee when they had the planning board or used to do that. And I do remember many times that the chair of the planning board would come before the county council and say, and this was the policy, and I think it still is, that there will be no children in apartments. And I think there needs to be really another look and handshake between the planning department and planning board and the county council about the reality that children do live in these apartments, as we all see. So I just wanted to let people know that is kind of the conventional wisdom coming from, I believe, still coming from the planning board and the and the county council is agreeing with it apparently. So, and I just wanted to comment about the idea of, yes, we have growth, but there is a way to be realistic about the infrastructure needs of the growth and manage the growth. And we did used to have, you may recall, moratoriums on growth and construction if schools got above a certain degree or percentage of capacity. And I think those also kind of fell by the wayside. So maybe it's time for us to take another look at what is realistic in terms of new construction and growth. Thank you. Thanks again. This is terrific.
You are welcome. Amy, go ahead.
Oh, I just was wondering what the difference is between this bill and the big housing bill that Governor Moore put forward last term, and lessons learned about how we were able to defeat that bill, if there's any similarities, and what lessons we can use from that to work on this bill.
I think just to go straight to lessons learned, it's grassroots. We have to be writing to our delegates and our senators. We have to get our neighbors involved. It has to be a pretty large number. I was actually a little discouraged when one of the delegates said they're getting 5 letters a day, or 5 letters a day. I don't know what they said. It sounded low to me. We need a rather large grassroots. I was struck in the Senate committee. I sat through all the testimony that it was just a constant parade of mayors from all over the state of Maryland, from up by Baltimore, Sykesville, in our area, Brookville. The mayor of Kensington testified. The mayor of the town of Chevy Chase testified. There were council members. The council chair of Prince George's County testified. But you had this constant 2-hour parade of elected officials from the jurisdictions of all of these delegates and senators saying this is a disaster, it won't work. It's hard for me to imagine, the panel just saying, well, that's too bad if we're doing it anyway, given what I saw anyway. So I just think it's a real grassroots project and there's no substitute for it. Jean, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything you've done today. I have a question. Have we asked where the voices of our infrastructure caregivers are? And I think about our infrastructure caregivers are WSSC, PEPCO, Washington Gas, DOT, both county as well as state, and really other utilities. Have we asked them to tell us what do they think? They know the infrastructure. They know what's hidden underground that we don't know.
Yeah.
And there is some history here, especially down in lower Chevy Chase, lower Montgomery County, because we go back to the turn of a couple of centuries ago. We need to ask them, what do they know we have? What's sitting in our own backyards? So many of these communities have dry wells that nobody even knows are there. If anybody would know about the capacity for change, it would be the people who are responsible for providing those services. I want to see what they think. I really do. So thank you so much again for this today.
You're welcome.
But let's ask the people that should know some of the answers to these important questions.
You would
Thank
think
you. I will lower my
Sure.
hand.
Yep, you would think that the Department of Housing at the state would have asked those questions. I know I was struck by the fact we have hundreds of water main breaks every year. Our water mains are 100 years old. In Bethesda, they're under Wisconsin Avenue. So there's a major infrastructure. In my testimony, I say I think they should do a complete review of our infrastructure in the state and come up with a cost for bringing it up to modern standards. I assume, and this is just a personal opinion, if the state asked that question and we haven't heard the answer, it's because it's not good. And if there was a good, easy answer, you're all set, and we would have heard that by now. But yeah, maybe that's something we can It's in my testimony, but it's something that we can elevate and make a request directly to the Department of Housing. Trying to find people who haven't gone yet. So Leanne, your hand is still up. Did you want to go again?
If there aren't people who
No, that's all
haven't
right. It
spoken
looks
yet.
like, oh, well, April, we have April who hasn't gone, and then you, Leanne. April, go ahead.
Okay, I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I live in Chevy Chase, but in the Montgomery County part. I'm on Pinehurst Parkway. And you know, we have some larger lots here, but I am concerned because I guess my issue is what I see is they were tearing down small houses like 2,000, 2,500 square foot homes, and they're building, you know, 4,000 square foot houses. And um, I know all these apartment buildings are going up, but I guess my question is there any way that the county can address or the state can address the overwhelming desire of developers to build these big apartment buildings instead of building, I don't know, a small Levittown kind of place where you have a lot of smaller houses with maybe 0 lot line or 10 feet between, you know, they could build small house because people with kids, they don't want to raise them in apartment buildings. If they could afford a house, they'd buy a house if there was a house available.
Yeah.
But they're chiseling away at the smaller house inventory and they're making giant houses because they think they can get the money for it. And then they're putting up these large apartment buildings, and I don't even know what the vacancy rate is on them, but maybe that's also a talking point for people to push back and say, what's the vacancy rate in all these gigantic buildings you're putting up?
I think the vacancy rates in downtown Silver Spring and downtown Bethesda and downtown Silver Spring are both around 10%, which
Oh,
is
it's
higher than what's an ideal market, which I think is probably why developers want to shift to townhouses right now. Leanne, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of what can you do and what will work, basically what happens when developers want to finance their projects is they have to get upfront venture capital, which is called equity capital, to first get the project going. And at the moment that it gets a return of 20%, which is one reason that developers go for luxury townhomes or luxury apartments, because they need to price the finished project in order to get that 20% return. What's happened in Montgomery County is there is a program to replace that 20% capital with county provided capital that last I heard was at about 7.5%. And what they've done is built more affordable rental housing with that county money. It would cost the state something to do that immediately. I don't know if it's immediately available, but putting some capital aside to work with developers of more affordable properties, whether that's starter homes, whether that's rental housing, is a potential policy alternative for the legislature and the Department of Housing to consider. Additionally, what is in the governor's, two bills in the governor's package that make some sense is number one, the donation of state-owned land to build more affordable housing. That makes a tremendous amount of sense. That's been done successfully in Montgomery County. And secondly is the governor's Housing Certainty Act that would allow development rights to vest for approximately 5 years after a project was approved locally. And that gives the developers more certainty to go forward. Although I would say, as others have mentioned, that it's usually financing conditions and market conditions that kick a project out of the market. It's not zoning.
Liz Joyce, did you want to go again?
Yes, I wanted. Someone asked if there is a bibliography of studies about upzoning. I'm putting one together, and also there's some terrific footnotes in Erica Jorgensen's study, which are substantive scholarships, so that can be looked at. I wanted to point out about infrastructure, something that we don't think about. Not only does there not seem to be an adequate infrastructure requirement, but what will happen is if these buildings are built and there is not the infrastructure to support them, then the taxpayers who are also the current taxpayers and residents will end up paying the bill. And as many people have pointed out, our taxes are already pretty substantive, even if housing prices are only 16th in the nation. So there's just so much to consider, and so much has not been addressed in this bill that the impact is so stunning that it needs to proceed very carefully, and this is the most conservative thing you can say about it.
Okay, we're going to have Jerry and then Erica, and then we're going to sign off for the night.
The question on infrastructure and how long would it last? We've been having problems in the neighborhood where I live, which has a little over 1,000 homes. 2 years ago, we met with WSSC to discuss the problems with the sewer system and that. They then discovered that 95% of our sewers, the main sewer lines in our area, have to either be replaced or relined. We've also had problems with natural gas, that we've had leaks all over the place.
Absolutely.
And they've done significant amount of work. The estimated useful life that WSSC thought was 50 years. Well, now we're at 65 years. And the same thing with the gas lines. They built them for 50 years. Almost all the infrastructure in Montgomery County that is more than 50 years old has to be replaced. And you cannot add additional capacity. We see in the case of the major sewer line that covers most of Montgomery County that has sewers, and Fairfax County, that, oh yeah, we had a minor leak that only dumped 250 million gallons of sewage into the Potomac River. That was 60 years old. All of these things are beyond their useful life. So anyone who says we can add more capacity for these things is just not telling you the truth and not realizing that most of the stuff in Montgomery County and Down County area is more than 50 years old. It doesn't work. And the question is not will it have to be replaced, but exactly when and who's going to pay for all of this, because these things are very expensive. They told us our project is going to start in March, which is pretty soon, and will end in August of 2027, just doing the sewers for about almost 1,000 homes. These things are major projects, and before we start adding, oh yeah, you can add 9 townhouses, you can add all of this, you can add everything. Well, guess what? You can't. I was on a zoning board in New York City. I don't know if you ever heard of Brooklyn. I was responsible for zoning for the entire borough of Brooklyn. Things get old. No one wants to go to a ribbon cutting for putting brand new sewers in or brand new gas lines in. They only want new developments, new schools, new major things. And even if you add a school, you got to have the sewer capacity, which no one is doing.
All right, so before I turn to Erica for the last word, I want to remind you all, you've got to write letters. If everyone who is on this call tonight found 4 other people in addition to themselves to write to their delegates, we will be in good shape. Okay, Erica, last word.
So quickly, we've mostly been talking about whether this bill achieves its desired goal, which is a bunch of infill townhouses, and what the impact might be. But let me draw your attention to what I think is the more likely and immediate impact, which is the getting rid of setbacks, getting rid of any lot coverage maximums means what? McMansions are welcome. Build bigger. Your neighbor should build a big freaking addition that runs right up to your property line. This is what are developers going to build in established neighborhoods? Huge 6,000, 8,000, whatever you think they can fit on the lot. That's an immediate concern, irrespective of whether you think townhouses will or won't be built. So,
yep. Okay, thank you, everyone. It was a really interesting discussion. Thanks to all the smart people that signed on. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. And we will be meeting again on March 9th. Mark Elrich is coming to talk about the budget. As always, we like to see all of our members, but members of the public are welcome as well. and we'll see you next time. Write your letters.
Thanks. Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks,
You're
everyone.
welcome.